The quantum communications array aboard the TES Stalwart erupted with activity, pulling Commander Marcus Stone from his sleep cycle. The message carried the highest priority signature he'd seen in his 15 years of deep space service. As he rushed to the bridge, the massive ship's corridors seemed to pulse with an energy that matched his racing heart. "Report," Stone commanded, his voice carrying across the bridge as officers snapped to attention. Lieutenant Emma Chen, his communications specialist, spoke without taking her eyes off her holographic display. "Sir, we're picking up a distress signal from the Zethany system. It's not a format we've seen before, but the desperation comes through clear enough." The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a strange crystalline being whose translucent body pulsed with internal light. Its voice, when processed through their translation matrix, carried notes of pure terror. "To any spacefaring civilization who can hear us, we are the Zethany. Our system is under attack by an entity we cannot comprehend. Our defensive capabilities are minimal. We are a species dedicated to art, philosophy, and the pursuit of knowledge. Please, we have children." Stone's jaw tightened. Humanity had learned the hard way that the galaxy was not always a friendly place. Their own brutal emergence onto the cosmic stage had taught them valuable lessons about survival. But it had also taught them something else. The strong had a duty to protect the weak. "How far?" Stone asked. 26 light hours at maximum burn. "Sir," Navigation Officer Patul responded. "We're the closest human vessel to their coordinates." Stone nodded slowly. The Stalwart wasn't just any ship. It was part of humanity's rapid response fleet, created specifically for situations like this. They were better armed and armored than any other human vessels, designed to handle threats that civilian ships couldn't dream of facing. "Send word to Fleet Command," Stone ordered. "But we're not waiting for a response. Plot a course to the Zethany system, maximum speed. And someone wake up Dr. Santos. I want everything we have on crystalline-based life forms." As his crew rushed to comply, Stone studied the tactical display. The Zethany system was well outside human space, in a region they'd barely begun to explore. Responding would mean operating without support, facing an unknown enemy, and potentially violating a dozen diplomatic protocols. But that's what humans did now. They'd learned from their own violent history and sworn to be better. The galaxy was full of predators, but humanity had evolved on a death world. They knew what it meant to fight against impossible odds. Multiple contacts. Tactical Officer Jackson's voice cut through the bridge's activity. "Sir, we're picking up massive energy signatures entering the Zethany system. Whatever's attacking them, it's big." The main screen shifted to show a terrifying sight. Massive organic-looking vessels, each one larger than anything in the human fleet, were surrounding the Zethany homeworld. They moved with an unsettling grace, their surfaces seeming to ripple and shift like liquid metal. "Those ships," Jackson continued, her voice tight with concern, "they're not just attacking. According to these readings, they're consuming, breaking down matter at the molecular level and absorbing it." Stone felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had theorized about the existence of such species, cosmic predators that fed on entire civilizations. But theory and reality were very different things. "Send a message to all RRF vessels in range," Stone commanded. "This is no longer a rescue mission. This is a preservation operation. We are not going to stand by and watch another species face extinction." As the Stalwart's massive engines powered up, more ships began appearing on their sensors. Other RRF vessels responding to Stone's emergency broadcast. Within hours, they had a fleet of 7 heavy warships, all racing toward the unknown. "Sir," Chen called out, her voice carrying a note of wonder. "The Zethany. They're sending us their historical archives, their art, their philosophy, their entire cultural heritage. They say even if they don't survive, they want someone to remember who they were." Stone stood from his command chair, his expression hardening. "Tell them we're not coming to document their extinction. We're coming to prevent it. Humanity remembers what it's like to stand alone against the dark. Not anymore. Not for anyone. The human fleet accelerated toward the Zethany system, their engines pushing the limits of physics itself. They didn't know what awaited them, but they knew one thing. Earth's children had not clawed their way up from the mud of their homeworld, survived countless extinction events, and reached the stars just to watch another species suffer the fate they had so narrowly avoided. The galaxy was about to learn why humans were classified as Deathworld species, and why picking on peaceful races was a very, very bad idea. The human fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Zethany system, and for a moment, even Commander Stone's battle-hardened crew fell silent. The Zethany homeworld, once a crystalline paradise according to their transmitted records, now lay shrouded in a writhing dark mass that seemed to drink in the light of the system's sun. Analysis, Stone demanded, his fingers digging into his command chair's armrests. Dr. Santos, the fleet's xenobiologist, spoke up from her hastily established station on the bridge. The attacking entities, we're calling them the Swarm. They're not just ships, Commander. They're more like living spacecraft. Each one appears to be a colonial organism, similar to Earth's coral reefs, but with technological integration we can barely comprehend. Weak points? Jackson asked from Tactical. That's the problem, Santos replied, her holographic displays showing complex biological readings. They don't seem to have any. Every part of their structure can apparently function independently. Damage one area, and it simply reforms from surrounding tissue. Stone watched as the massive swarm vessels shifted their formation, finally seeming to notice the human fleet's arrival. Their movements were unnaturally smooth, almost hypnotic. Get any contact with any surviving Zethany ships. The main screen flickered, revealing the Zethany Elder, whose crystalline form now showed visible cracks and darkened patches. You actually came. We didn't think anyone would respond. But you must leave immediately. The Swarm, they're not what we thought. They're not invaders. They're harvesters. Explain, Stone commanded, even as his tactical officers began positioning the fleet for combat. They don't want our resources or our territory. The Zethany Elder's voice cracked with despair. They want our evolution, our biological and technological advancement. They consume species they deem worthy, absorbing not just our physical forms, but the very essence of what makes us unique. Already, they've taken 3 of our colony worlds. Those they've consumed, we can hear them sometimes, screaming in frequencies only we can perceive. Lieutenant Chen's console suddenly blazed with warnings. Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups from the swarm vessels. They're changing. The dark ships began to transform, their surfaces flowing like liquid metal as they adapted to the presence of the human fleet. What had been smooth, almost artistic forms became angular and predatory. Weapon ports appeared across their hulls, each one tracking the human vessels with deadly precision. Now that's interesting, Santos muttered, studying her readings. They're not just responding to our presence. They're evolving in real time, specifically to counter what they perceive as our threats. Stone's mind raced. Humanity had never faced anything like this, but that didn't mean they were helpless. Earth's history was filled with stories of seemingly unstoppable forces being defeated by unconventional thinking. Dr. Santos, he called out, you said they evolved to counter threats. What happens if we present them with contradictory information? If we make ourselves appear simultaneously weak and strong? Santos' eyes widened as she caught his meaning. In theory, it could create a feedback loop in their adaptation process. But, Commander, we'd have to get close enough to implement any such strategy. Their current formation is designed to keep us at optimum firing range for their weapons, Stone finished, which means they're thinking tactically. They're intelligent, and intelligent enemies can make mistakes. Stone opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Commander Stone. What we're facing isn't just an enemy. It's an evolutionary dead end. a species so focused on stealing the strengths of others that it's forgotten how to develop its own. We're about to show them why humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to do the unexpected. He turned to his tactical officer. Jackson, remember those discarded mining charges we were supposed to dispose of at the next port? The ones that are officially too unstable for military use. Jackson grinned, catching on immediately, already plotting optimal deployment vectors. Sir. Chen, get me the Zethany Elder again. When the crystalline being appeared on screen, Stone's voice carried a steel that even their advanced translation matrix couldn't fully convey. We need you to gather any survivors you can and prepare to move them behind our lines. What's about to happen? Well, let's just say humans have a lot of experience turning our weaknesses into strengths. As the human fleet began to move into position, Stone reflected on the irony of the situation. The swarm thought they were the apex predators of the galaxy, evolving by stealing the strengths of others. They were about to learn why humanity, a species that had evolved on a death world, understood something they never could. True strength comes not from taking, but from protecting others at any cost. The battle that would follow would teach the swarm a harsh lesson about the price of peace and why humanity was willing to pay it. The unstable mining charges tumbled through space, their erratic signatures broadcasting what appeared to be critical containment failures. To the swarm's hyper-evolved sensory arrays, they must have looked like mistakes. Desperate weapons deployed by a primitive species out of their depth. That was exactly what Commander Stone was counting on. Multiple adaptive responses detected, Santos reported, watching the swarm's reaction. Their outer layers are shifting to absorb the expected energy release. They're actually trying to consume the charge's potential energy. Stone allowed himself a grim smile. Humanity's first lesson in warfare. Sometimes the best bait is the one that looks too good to be true. All ships. Execute pattern Delta on my mark. The human fleet had arranged itself in what appeared to be a standard defensive formation, protecting their unstable weapons as they approached the swarm. But there was nothing standard about what they were about to attempt. Sir, Chen called out, the Zethany are reporting successful evacuation of their remaining orbital facilities. They're asking what we're planning. They say the swarm's adaptive capabilities make conventional attacks futile. Conventional is exactly what we're not going to be, Stone responded. Tell them to watch and learn why humans are considered the crazy ones of the galaxy. Jackson, status of the charge modifications. Ready, sir. Each one has been creatively adjusted according to Dr. Santos' specifications, though I still think this is insane. Insanity is our specialty. Execute. The charges suddenly altered their trajectories, their erratic movements becoming precise and coordinated. Before the swarm could react, each charge split open, releasing not explosions, but carefully calibrated electromagnetic pulses combined with targeted data bursts. They're receiving the data packets, Chen confirmed, transmitting our entire library of Earth's evolutionary history, modified according to Dr. Santos' algorithm. The effect on the swarm was immediate and dramatic. Their perfectly coordinated formations began to waver as they processed the incoming information. Billions of years of brutal competition, mass extinctions, and desperate adaptations that had forged humanity's homeworld. Their adaptive responses are going haywire, Santos announced, her voice rising with excitement. They're trying to process and counter every evolutionary path simultaneously. It's creating cascading conflicts in their biological computing systems. Stone watched as the massive swarm vessels began to twist and writhe, their surfaces rippling as they attempted to adapt to threats that had gone extinct millions of years ago. They wanted to understand evolution. Let's show them what real adaptation looks like. The human fleet struck then, their weapons precisely targeted at the areas where the swarm's biology was most confused and conflicted. But they weren't aiming to destroy. They were forcing the swarm to adapt, again and again, faster and faster. Sir, Jackson reported, The swarm's responses are becoming increasingly erratic. Some of their ships are actually attacking each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe as their adaptation protocols conflict. Stone nodded. That's because they've never encountered a species that evolved like we did. They steal evolution from others. We earned ours the hard way, through countless failures and extinctions. Each adaptation they're trying to process represents a challenge humanity already overcame. The Zethani Elder's voice came through the comm system, filled with awe. We don't understand. How can you predict their responses so accurately? Because we know what it means to adapt or die, Stone replied. Earth isn't just our homeworld. It's the galaxy's greatest training ground. Every predator, every disaster, every challenge shaped us. The swarm thinks evolution is about taking the best traits of others. We know it's about surviving long enough to develop your own. As if to emphasize his point, several swarm vessels suddenly began to break formation, their coordinated assault dissolving into chaos as their adaptive protocols reached critical failure points. The human fleet pressed their advantage, not with overwhelming force, but with precisely calculated strikes that forced even more evolutionary responses. They're retreating, Chen announced as the massive dark ships began to pull back from the Zethani homeworld, multiple swarm vessels showing signs of severe biological instability. Stone watched as the enemies that had terrorized the Zethani fled from the very species they had initially dismissed as primitive. Send a message to the retreating swarm vessels, he ordered. Tell them this is their only warning. The galaxy isn't their feeding ground anymore. There's a new apex predator in space, and we protect our own. As the dark ships vanished into FTL, leaving behind a graveyard of their own failed adaptations, the Zethani Elder spoke again. You didn't just save us, they said, their crystalline form glowing with emotion. You showed us something we never understood before. True strength isn't about being the most powerful. It's about being willing to stand against any odds to protect others. Stone looked at his crew, each member bearing the proud scars of humanity's own evolutionary journey. That's the thing about coming from a death world, he replied. You learn pretty quickly that survival isn't just about being the strongest. It's about being clever enough to win without fighting when you can, and brave enough to fight without mercy when you must. The battle was over, but its impact would ripple through the galaxy. The swarm had learned a harsh lesson about the true nature of evolution, and the galaxy had learned something even more important. Humanity wasn't just another spacefaring species. They were the guardians that evolution itself had forged, ready to stand between the darkness and those who couldn't protect themselves. In the aftermath of the battle, the TES Stalwart's observation deck provided a stunning view of the Zethani homeworld. The crystalline planet's surface still bore scars from the swarm's attack, but its natural bioluminescence was already beginning to shine through the darkness, like hope emerging from shadow. Commander Stone stood with Dr. Santos and the Zethani Elder, Valix, watching as human rescue ships coordinated with surviving Zethani vessels to begin restoration efforts. The contrast between the species couldn't have been more striking. The humans in their reinforced combat suits, the Zethani with their delicate crystalline forms that refracted starlight into rainbow patterns. Your strategy, Valix began, their form pulsing with curious light patterns. It shouldn't have worked. The swarm's adaptive capabilities were far beyond your technology level, yet you turned that very advantage against them. How? Santos smiled, pulling up a holographic display of Earth's evolutionary tree, because we understand something fundamental about evolution that the swarm never could. True adaptation isn't about being the best. It's about being good enough to survive and pass on what you've learned. The display shifted to show Earth's various mass extinction events. Every one of these catastrophes should have wiped out life on our planet, Santos continued. Instead, each one created new opportunities for species that could adapt quickly enough. Humans aren't the strongest, fastest, or most durable species, even on our own world. But we are the most adaptable. Your weapons, Valix observed, They weren't just carrying evolutionary data, were they? There was something else. Stone nodded. Human creativity, art, music, literature, philosophy, everything that makes us more than just survivors. The swarm tried to process it all simultaneously, trying to understand how a species they considered primitive could produce such complexity. Lieutenant Chen joined them, carrying a data crystal containing the complete record of the battle. "Sir, the Zetheni archives have requested this for preservation. They say it marks a turning point in their history. A turning point for all of us." Valix agreed, their crystalline form resonating with deep tones that the translation matrix interpreted as profound emotion. "We had always believed that peace was a sign of evolutionary advancement, that violence and conflict were markers of primitive species. You showed us that true peace comes not from the absence of strength, but from the wisdom to know how to use it." Stone watched as a group of human engineers worked alongside Zetheni artisans to repair a damaged atmospheric processor. The humans' practical efficiency complemented the Zetheni's elegant technical solutions in ways neither species could have achieved alone. "That's the real reason the swarm failed," Santos added, studying her latest analysis of the battle data. "They collected traits and abilities from other species, but they never understood the most important aspect of evolution, the power of cooperation. They saw other species as resources to be consumed. We see them as potential allies." Alert chimed on Chen's console. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from multiple non-aligned species in neighboring sectors. Word of the battle is spreading. They're requesting protection agreements with Earth." Stone exchanged glances with Valix. "They're not just requesting protection," the Zetheni elder observed. "They're recognizing humanity's role in the galaxy. You've become what my people could not. Guardians of peace who understand the price of war." "Speaking of price," Jackson interjected, joining the group with fresh tactical analyses. "Long-range sensors are detecting residual swarm activity at the edges of known space. They're wounded, but not destroyed. They'll be back, and they'll have tried to adapt to our tactics." "Let them try," Stone replied, his voice carrying the weight of Earth's long history of survival. "Because they still haven't learned the most important lesson about humans. We don't just adapt to survive. We adapt to protect. Every time they return, they'll find us stronger, not because we've stolen anyone else's evolution, but because we've learned and grown alongside our allies." Valix's crystalline form shimmered with what the humans had learned to recognize as determination. "Then we will learn with you. The Zetheni have always been scholars and artists, but perhaps it's time we learn to be something more. Not to become warriors like you, but to understand how to preserve peace through strength." As if to emphasize their words, a piece of swarm biotechnology they'd recovered during the battle began to pulse with faint energy signatures. Santos immediately moved to contain it, but her readings showed something unexpected. "It's not trying to adapt or attack," she reported with surprise. "It's breaking down, reverting to its base components, as if the very concept of stealing evolution from others has become antithetical to its existence." "Good," Stone said firmly, "because that's the message we need to send to any other species thinking of following the swarm's path. Evolution isn't about taking. It's about becoming what you need to be through your own efforts and choices." The observation deck fell silent as they watched another wave of human ships arrive, bringing supplies and aid to the Zetheni. Each vessel represented humanity's choice, to use their hard-earned strength not for conquest, but for protection. They had evolved on a death world, survived countless catastrophes, and reached the stars. Now they would ensure that peaceful species like the Zetheni had the chance to do the same, not through theft or conquest, but through cooperation and mutual growth. 3 months after the Battle of Zetheni, Commander Stone stood before the newly formed Galactic Defense Council. The chamber, designed by Zetheni architects and reinforced by human engineers, represented something unprecedented. A union between species that had evolved along drastically different paths. The swarm's attack changed everything. Stone addressed the assembled representatives, his voice carrying across the crystalline chamber. Not because they were powerful, but because they showed us what happens when evolution loses its way. Holographic displays showed the ongoing restoration of the Zethani system, where human resilience and Zethani creativity had achieved in months what might have taken years. But more importantly, they showed something else. Ships from dozens of species working together, learning from each other without losing their unique identities. We've confirmed that the swarm has retreated beyond the galactic rim, Lieutenant Chen reported, now serving as Earth's military liaison to the Council. But they've left us something more valuable than victory: understanding. Dr. Santos stepped forward, her research team's findings displayed behind her. The swarm's biological technology wasn't just advanced, it was a warning. They represented what happens when a species tries to force evolution, to take shortcuts instead of earning their adaptations. Their failure wasn't tactical, it was philosophical. Valix, now serving as the head of the Council, raised their crystalline form in agreement. The humans showed us that true strength comes in many forms. We Zethani believed that abandoning all forms of conflict made us evolved. The swarm believed that consuming others' traits made them superior. Both perspectives were flawed. Because real evolution isn't about becoming the strongest, Stone continued. It's about becoming what you need to be, through effort and choice. Earth taught humanity that lesson countless times. Now we have the chance to share it with the galaxy. The chamber's displays shifted to show the new defense networks being established throughout known space. Human warships patrolled alongside Zethani sensor arrays, while other species contributed their own unique capabilities to the coalition. We're not just building defenses, Jackson explained from her new position as tactical coordinator. We're creating something the swarm could never understand, an evolutionary network based on cooperation rather than consumption. The evidence was visible in every aspect of their work. Human ships now carried Zethani crystal matrices that enhanced their sensor capabilities. Zethani architecture incorporated human-inspired defensive elements without losing its artistic beauty. Other species had begun contributing their own innovations, creating technologies that were greater than the sum of their parts. The swarm will return, Stone acknowledged, addressing the concern that hung unspoken in the chamber. They'll try to adapt to what we did to them, but they still won't understand the fundamental truth. You can't steal evolution. You have to live it, experience it, learn from it. Valix's form pulsed with agreement. Already, we see the proof. The swarm's abandoned biotechnology, which we've contained for study, shows no sign of adaptation. Without the drive to consume, it remains inert. Yet our combined technologies grow more sophisticated each day, through cooperation and mutual understanding. Stone moved to the chamber's observation window, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so full of threats. Now they represented something else: possibility. Humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill us countless times, he said quietly. We survived not because we were special, but because we refused to give up. Now we have the chance to ensure that peaceful species like the Zethani never have to face extinction alone. The council chamber hummed with unified purpose as representatives from dozens of species pledged their support to the new coalition. Each brought their own evolutionary history, their own strengths and perspectives. Together, they represented something the swarm could never achieve: genuine growth through diversity. Let this be our message to the galaxy, Stone concluded. Evolution isn't a weapon to be stolen or a trait to be consumed. It's a journey we all share. And if anyone else tries to follow the swarm's path, they'll learn why humanity's greatest evolutionary trait isn't our strength or our technology. It's our determination to protect those who need it. As the council session ended, Stone received a transmission from Earth. New defense treaties were being signed across known space. Species that had once viewed humans with suspicion now saw them as guardians. The galaxy was changing, not through force or consumption, but through the kind of cooperative evolution that the swarm had never understood. The swarm thought they were the pinnacle of evolution. Santos remarked, reviewing the latest data on their recovered biotechnology. But they never understood what we learned on Earth. The most successful species aren't the ones that take the most. They're the ones that contribute the most to their environment. Stone looked out at the stars again, seeing not darkness but possibility. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or victims, but as protectors. They were evolution's children, shaped by Earth's harshness into something unique, a species that understood both the price of survival and the value of peace. The galaxy was entering a new era, and humanity would help guide it not through force, but through the same determination that had carried them from Earth's primordial oceans to the stars themselves. The swarm had wanted to steal evolution's gifts. Humanity would show the galaxy how to earn them.